When it happened, it was the farthest thing from my mind. Not an inkling in the world. My wife and I like to road trip in the Rocky Mountains. This trip we had visited the home of Captain Lewis at Estes Park, Colorado, and bought some wine at a local winery near there before going on to Aspen late that night. Every hotel along the strip was full and we were giving up hope when we came to the next to last one. We always fly by the seat of our pants on road trips, and I was beginning to think it backfired on us this time and we would have to sleep miles out in a flea-bag place. I was worried and tired. The Aspenwood Motor Inn was just the other side of the Roaring Fork River and long. Lots of rooms. But when I went to the front desk, the high school-looking young man said there were none left. I was defeated looking, I'm sure. As I turned to leave, he hesitantly said, "Well, there is one." Yes, anything, I told him. I was thinking it was some overpriced suite, but it was actually a decent price. He pulled the old-fashioned metal key down and gave it to me, and I was so relieved. Happy to pay. Room 1408 was on the top floor, a few rooms from the very end, and it was big, double queens, a huge fireplace, and a balcony. The decor was 1970s, green shag carpet, Sears paintings, quilted coverlets. It looked like it had never been updated since the place was built. It was great for a couple who teened in that period. We ate cheese and drank wine on the balcony to the gurgle of the river. We even fed the trout with crackers and left cheese on the rail for squirrels, but it was early November and cold, so we went inside to sit on the large flat stone hearth in front of the fire. One thing led to another, and we did what that hearth was likely made so large for. After one round there, we went for another round on the bed. We love each other very much and very passionately. 2 bottles of wine had made us drowsy, so it was only natural to fall asleep in each other's arms. Just as I was going under, I felt the bed sink behind me and my wife crawl against my back to spoon me from behind. She was ice cold. I could feel her so cold against my back. I was almost asleep. Did she come in from the balcony? We had both stopped smoking at that time, so there was no reason for her to be out there. I was annoyed and about to grumble about it when I realized she was sound asleep, warm, and curled to my front. I was fully awake then and sitting up staring into the shadows of the room. That wasn't good enough, so I got up and checked under the beds and the bathroom, as well as the lock on the door and balcony. What else could I do? It had to be a dream. One of those lucid things. I had never had one, but I had heard they seemed really real. After around 45 minutes of flickering firelight and wind noise outside, I drifted off to sleep again. I woke up an hour later freezing. There was no cover on the bed. None. I looked to one side. Nothing. The other? Nothing. The end of the bed? Nothing. I couldn't have wakened in a Nebraska cornfield and been more puzzled. It had to be somewhere. I got up and searched the room. Nothing. I went into the bath. Nothing. I looked behind the shower curtain. Nothing. I went over every corner and cabinet. I even unlocked and looked on the balcony and over the edge in case my wife had sleepwalked and thrown them over for some crazy reason. Nothing. All I could think to do was go back inside and take the covers off the other bed and use those. As I was walking to the bed, I noticed one corner of the comforter peeking from under the bed. They were stuffed under it. Why? What would make? How? My wife was solid asleep. I hadn't been able to wake her to even ask about it. I covered the bed again and crawled back in. I was concerned and made sure she was breathing okay. What else could I do but go back to sleep? It was 1 in the morning. An hour later, I awoke freezing again. This time I knew where to look, but that didn't exactly make me feel better. It was as if it was hearing my thoughts and said, "Don't believe the first time. How about now?" I got up and made the bed as tight as I could. Hospital corners, the works. You could bounce a quarter off it. I still recall basic training. I stood there and decided that wasn't enough. I built the fire to a roar and stood in front of it. Not knowing what else to do, I said these words aloud. "I know you are lonely, but I have to get some sleep. I'm sorry, but I'm tired. I wish you peace." Then I eased my way under the cover and slept the night undisturbed. The next morning, I told my wife about it. She was amazed she missed it all. There is a picture I took of her gleeful smile sitting on the bed. In the light of day, it was a funny story. I laughed too, but I tempered mine with how I felt that night in the darkened room, firelight playing over everything. She called down for breakfast to be sent up. They told her nobody was supposed to be in that room. Well, there is. Send it. Then she turned to me wide-eyed and mimicked the Twilight Zone theme. A few friends and I decided we wanted to visit a local cemetery one night just for funsies because this place had a reputation for being haunted. It is situated on top of a large hill in the middle of nowhere. miles from the nearest town, Boone, and at the end of about a quarter-mile-long dead-end road leading to the cemetery there is a radio tower. Some speculate that the radio waves are the source of the strange activity that people experience there. Anyway, just as soon as we get to the base of the radio tower and pull onto the lane going back to the cemetery, we're already creeped out because the trees on both sides of the road create a sort of tunnel through the woods leading to a small rock parking area with the iron gate at the entrance to the burial grounds. Right when we parked and I stepped out of the car, I immediately heard what sounded like a voice in the woods and brushed it off as imagining things, until my friend goes, "Did you hear that?" This all happened within a split second, so I knew they heard what I did and I asked them to describe it to double check, and she independently described what I heard. We decided to walk through the gate and into the cemetery to walk around in the dark and take some random photos, hoping to catch something on camera. That was the first time I'd ever seen orbs with my own eyes. Each one I saw had a different color with a tail that trailed behind it, kind of streaky the way a sparkler is when you move it really quickly, but these were slow moving and floaty like a butterfly. The entire time we kept hearing what sounded like a woman in the woods, and as time went on the sound got louder and longer, sounding like someone moaning in pain every few minutes. You could even make out what sounded like syllables and speech, but not enough to understand any words. Eventually we decided to investigate the noise, and in a tight group we started walking toward the sound until we were about 20 yards from the edge of the woods. Then the noise rang out like a long drawn-out scream that tapered off, the loudest and longest we heard it up until that point. We all froze in terror until someone gathered their senses enough to say we needed to leave. We got the hell out of there, and I didn't sleep for 3 days after it all happened because I was so freaked out. I should note that I've spent a lot of time in the woods around Pisgah National Forest hunting, so I'm knowledgeable about local wildlife, and I have never heard anything like that from an animal before. There was also no sound of crunching leaves or any kind of movement from the source of this noise. I've even looked online at different animal sounds like foxes and mountain lions, and I have yet to hear anything that even comes close to what we heard that night. After that experience, we were all shaken up. We discussed it endlessly, trying to rationalize what we had heard and seen. Some of us believed it was a paranormal encounter, while others insisted there must be a logical explanation. Despite our differing opinions, one thing was clear: none of us were eager to return to that cemetery anytime soon. In the weeks that followed, we heard rumors from locals about the history of the cemetery. Some claimed it was built on ancient Native American burial grounds, while others whispered about a tragic event that had occurred there decades ago. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. My friends and I heard what sounded like a woman moaning and screaming in pain at a cemetery in the middle of the night, and also saw orbs. The experience left us shaken and questioning what we had encountered. I worked at a 240-plus-year-old pub and in near a town nestled in the mountains. I lived in an 1870 home within walking distance of the pub and have several stories that relate to the pub and my house. Oh, fiddlesticks. Just in the 15 years that I worked there, it was called the Timber Inn, the Mountain View Inn, the Pine Ridge Lodge, and the Timber Tap Room. I was on the fence about belief in the paranormal until I began working there. Within the first week of starting there, I was 14 years old and washing the dishes. Two of the older waitresses were telling me about the innkeeper who passed away here and haunts the place. The housekeeping lady, Maria, who spoke very broken English, came in on one of these conversations and said, "Yes, we have ghosts, but they're friendly ghosts." I asked one of the other dishwashers, who goes to my high school, if they are messing with me, and he begins telling me of his experiences. I could sit here and tell ghost stories for hours based on ones that were shared with me in that building, but I'm going to stick to the experiences I was there for. Absolutely serious. I have goosebumps head to toe just remembering a few of the things from over the years of working there. Full body apparitions, things moving around, the last person locking up at night being lured into the attic by sounds only to have the lights go out when people pet up there. Many experiences over the years. In fact, most of the women waitresses refused to lock up at night and be alone in the building. After nearly a year of working there, I was upstairs putting on my kitchen uniform when I saw what I assumed to be my own shadow on a wall, but I saw it cock its head and walk away. I sprinted downstairs only to be laughed at when I could barely speak, trying to tell the other staff. The all-time most frightening thing that ever happened there was related to this one waitress who had worked there for several years and was already frightened of the place despite not having had any of her own experiences. She would always pay me $10 to go upstairs late at night and do her cash drop in the safe. She was scared enough to trust a teenager with hundreds of dollars every night, but I was a trustworthy kid, and she was good to me there. One day, after about 8 years of working together, I was still working there a few nights a week while attending college. This particular server was there to get her paycheck in the front office on her day off. I was there early because I opened and ran the kitchen all afternoon on Sundays. I will never forget talking to the owner and Emily in the front office, which was connected to the main living fireplace room of the original inn. During the conversation, we begin to hear Emily's 4-year-old daughter chatting away playing in the next room over. Then we start hearing her yell no, 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 bad. All three of us walk in and see her sitting on a couch staring at an antique rocking chair saying in a very cute kid voice, "Yes, no, okay." Emily asks the toddler who she was talking to, and she very matter-of-factly said that she was talking to the ghosts. "I'm talking to the ghosts, Mommy, the ghost people who live here." Emily grabbed her daughter and said, "We have to go now," and she ran out the front door. She left her paycheck on the desk and didn't return for it for a couple of days. If I was shook, she must have been mortified for her daughter. One of the waitresses who had worked at the pub for many years claimed to have heard children's laughter coming from an empty room late at night. Despite checking the room several times, she never found any explanation for the source of the sounds. The maintenance manager of the building reported seeing shadows moving around the main lounge of the pub after closing, even when no one else was inside the building. He often heard whispers and footsteps that seemed to follow him through the hallways, leaving him with a shiver down his spine. I'll end it with the icing on the cake. There was also this other time where 2 of my good friends that I met working there all met up with me for a canoe camping trip on an island with no cell service. We are all out there drinking the night away around the campfire and we began telling each other ghost stories from our workplace of many years. I heard more untold stories from those 2 men that night. One of them managed the bar for nearly 18 years, so 5 nights a week he was closing up, and the other man had managed the kitchen, so he was also often alone in the building late and early. Both men shared the same exact story of being lured into the attic by boot stomping from one end to the other and being managers went up to kick out the roaming guest or bar patron only to get up to the top of the stairs and have the light switch turn off. It terrified me that both men shared almost word for word the same experience. The kitchen manager said that he and several others saw a woman dressed in an elegant white dress in the large mirror over the hearth several times. There have been too many thousands of weddings in that building's function hall to remember. Basically one every week all summer long. The audacity of some folks.